Okay, so I should be recording now. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead. The first thing I want to share with you guys is the latest metrics report, which I did have linked up in the invite. So if you hadn't had a chance to check that out, please do actually bookmark that link because it's a link that will update, the data will update on that link in real time. So this is the new metrics report going forward, and it would help for me to share my desktop so I can actually show you guys what I'm talking about. And let's do that here. So this report, I gave a walkthrough of this last Wednesday during the tactical meeting. This is put together in Data Studio, so it's a tool that's leveraging GA360 content. It's a monthly report, so it's a look at month-over-month key performance indicators for all the newspaper sites as well as the individual market sites. So if we jump to the second slide, and I will say that Data Studio is in beta, and it is something that we're using officially for reports, internal reports, but sometimes it can be slow to load, which looks like that may or may not be happening. So I'm not sure if it depends on how many people are looking at the link or what the factors are that contribute to the performance of the report. But I promise you that the data is there. Just be patient with it. And as you can see, this all just loaded in here. So this is a templated report. So there's 2 slides for each of the market sites. So actually each of the sites, like Ohio has 3 sites. So each of those sites have 2 slides. And then the newspaper as a whole has 2 slides as well. The newspaper aggregate template is a little bit different on page 2 than the other breakdown, but I'll show that in a moment. So I'm not going to go through every single slide because they're templated, but I want everybody to be familiar with what we have now. And if there's anything you're expecting to see or would like to see or have any questions, we can talk through that today. Or of course, if you have any that come up, feel free to reach out to me at any time. So this breaks down, this slide that we're looking at here shows us month-over-month numbers for newspapers as a whole. So we can see starting in August, and that is because we have a confidence sense of data from August 1st in GA360. So the idea is that like next year, for example, this would show every month, and so like December doesn't have any data in here yet because we haven't hit December, but as soon as December 1 hits, these fields will automatically update. So these November numbers are automatically updating in real time at the end of each day. So that's why for some of the visualizations, you'll see a drop off in November that doesn't reflect the full month since we're only on the 6th of the month. So the way that this is kind of parsed out is by content types for events, and that's done through the URL structure that is consistent across all of the event sites for newspapers. So that translates to event listings, which is the highest performing content type in terms of page views. And I will say the primary, really main metric that we're looking at in this report as a whole is page views. So we're no longer focused on visits. With GA360, you know, it's a session-based platform, and so page views is our key performance indicator for this product. So events is our highest content type and across all the sites. As a whole, before I jump into those content types, I will say that we are upticking in terms of page views month over month, so that's great. And then in terms of the breakdown for content types, we do see that uptick translated as well. So search is our second greatest content type for the events product. This is users actually typing in or selecting the search button or any of the features of the search form. So not like the main site search, but the actual points local search form. And then home obviously is the home page, but the home page does break down to the website, so desktop or mobile, website as well as the homepage for the app. So we are, for most, if not all of the sites, teasing the homepage for the events in the handset app. And so we'll see that translate into the site reports in a moment. There's also there's categories, movies, and venues. As you can see, the page views decrease as we get, into some of these content types. And there are some others that we're not even looking at, like neighborhoods, just because the traffic is so low to those particular types of content. I will say that the movies is an aggregate of the movie page itself, as well as all of the individual movie listings and all of the individual theaters. So it's a lot of content in there that makes up this total. Any questions about how the site content types, like how they work or what they mean before we move on? Perfect. And then this next set of modules here just shows shows how each of the sites makes up that total for the previous month. So I'm showing last month's numbers since we have a full month instead of the current month that we're in. So for last month, we had 467,000 page views for October, and this shows how that translates for each of the sites and which sites bring in from a percentage perspective that traffic from their site, and you can see that visualization here. This also, I should say, for each of these items, whether we're looking at this module or the one we just looked at, there's a tracker from the previous month. So you're looking at performance of the previous month for that dimension. So this is telling us that we're 25% up on page views for Access Atlanta compared to the previous month. So September compared to October for this module, for example. So that's what those up and down arrows represent. It's the previous month for whatever you're looking at. And then the other piece on this first slide is telling us device information. So desktop versus mobile versus tablet. So we do see an increase in desktop and mobile, although it is definitely apparent that the majority of the audience is coming in through desktop as an aggregate. We're pretty flat on tablet. Any questions on that? I'm gonna hope that the next slide loads a little bit quicker so that we can get into it. Okay, that's pretty good. So this next row shows us how the content for newspapers is, how users are coming into the site. And so organic search is the greatest driver typically of that content as a whole. Some of the markets are neck and neck with organic search and direct traffic. We did have a huge spike in organic search traffic in September. A lot of that was coming from the Palm Beach market. So there's, as you can see here, there's a lot of opportunity for growth in the social space. We really don't promote this content much, if at all, in some markets on social networks. And yeah, this just gives some additional information about how the channels break down by site, and how event listings break down by site, how the searches break down by site. But all this information, if you're interested for your particular market, is available in what I'm going to show you next. So I do want to mention that this report is not linear, so you don't have to jump through each slide to get to what you want. You can navigate to whatever site that you're interested in for that moment. So I'm just going to jump to Atlanta by selecting it in my drop-down menu, or I could have hit the next arrow. And now we're going to start looking at the two slides that represent the template for the events sites. So this is similar to the newspaper aggregate, but the second slide is really different. So this is just showing us that same sort of information, but specifically for events.accessatlanta.com. What is the month-over-month page views for the site in real time, the breakdown for content types for events, search, home, etc., how the users are coming to this content. So you can see for Atlanta, organic search and direct are really close, like I mentioned, and then you can see the device information as well for desktop, mobile, and tablet. So this just provides you with more information about how your audience is engaging with your content, both where they're coming from, what they're on, and what they're most interested in once they're there. So this second slide or second piece of the template is really unique to each market, and I think it's going to be helpful for sort of content production, but also just to give you a better sense of your market's content in terms of these content types, top performing pages by that type of content. So we have the top events for Atlanta shown here for October. So that just gives us a sense of what were the top events. We also have what the top searches were for last month. And then we can see the information about the homepage. So we can see here that the second line item actually represents the web view in app on the handset app for AJC. And then we also can see what the top categories were for October for Atlanta. So festivals, concerts, kids and family, performing arts. We can see what the top movies content was, knowing again that this is the movies page as well as the movie listings and the individual theaters. We can see here too that the second highest, and this is a low amount of traffic, but the second highest piece of content for movies is within the app. So that's good to know that our audience is consuming this content in the app. So there may be more opportunities for us to tease this content in that space, for example. And then I did include what are some of the top venues. So again, venues is a lower driver of traffic, but it's something that we used to include in our previous reports. So I wanted to make sure to offer everything that we were providing from the previous reports in this report and then some. So I'm not going to go through the other slides because they're exactly the same information, just the numbers will reflect the individual site. So I'm going to take a pause to see if there are any questions about what we just reviewed, or comments or things that you would like to see here. Everything makes sense?
Yeah, this is really helpful, Jen.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. I was worried there that I was like on mute the whole recording. Awesome. So this obviously is something that can change over time. So if you think of other things down the road, this is really kind of a first pass at putting this together in Data Studio. It's a really easy to use sort of setup. And what's nice about it is it's kind of, like I said, a set and forget. So I would recommend bookmarking this link and then checking in wherever it makes sense for you to check in, if it's at the end of the month, to see how the numbers are updated. And then if there are other things you would like to see, let me know and we can look at incorporating those across the board. So if there aren't any other questions on that, I'm going to jump into the roadmap stuff. Okay. So I put together a spreadsheet. I don't have it linked up in the invite, but I will share it in meeting notes. And I will go ahead and put the link in the chat window, and I believe that will come over in the recording as well. So this is also a first pass at putting together a roadmap for events as a product. And the idea here is that, can I go full screen somehow? Is that F11? No. Sorry, I was trying to remember how to go full screen, but this will be fine because you can see all of the line items now. So this is a first pass at putting together a comprehensive list of what we want to see going forward for the rest of this year, if there's any room for development, and definitely into 2018. So the goal here is to think about things related to business value for the site. And what I've done is I've kind of limited business value to these standards that are tied to our OKRs. So we're really focused on improving infrastructure, growing our audience, growing revenue. These are our business drivers for now until that changes. And so what we're thinking about with each of these items is how to improve infrastructure, how to grow audience, how to grow revenue. So I'm totally open to input. Actually, I would greatly appreciate input from any and all of you about things related to business value around those topics, so that we can get them in the spreadsheet and prioritize them. So what I've done here is, and let me resort this because I was looking at it differently a second ago. So let me do this so that we're actually looking at rank. So it makes a little more sense. Okay. So I haven't gone through ranking everything yet, but the idea here is that, growing the audience is number one, most likely with this, because the more audience we have, the more revenue we have. And then, of course, improving infrastructure is closely tied to that as well. So one of the first pieces, and I'm open to suggestions about how to go through this. We only have 10 minutes, so I'm probably not going to be able to go through everything. So I'm just going to focus on some of the highlights. But from a metrics perspective, we do have AMP pages on these sites, but we are not tracking them. So we have zero metrics around them, so we have no idea how they're performing. So that could be a really light lift for us to grow our audience if those pages are doing well for us. If they're not, then at least we know that. So that's kind of one of the things I ranked up higher. I am open to re-ranking these, particularly if I get feedback from you all. So the two biggest things, though, around content and improving infrastructure are the duplicate content that we have on our site. So it's definitely a pain point. So there are several line items here that address management of duplicate content, things like including an advanced search for duplicates. That's the second highest ranked item. I also have some things around some duplicate content that we get from user-generated content. So, for example, I'd like to offer users an option to scrape their sites. That's not something we're doing right now, and I think I know we spend a lot of time, I don't know if you guys are all aware of this, Ohio is the only market that has an open gate to allow their users to submit and it automatically goes live. All the other markets have a process in place for manual approval for all the events, and that takes almost 20 hours a week for an intern that we have to manage that. That's a lot of time for something that isn't really driving a whole lot of traffic for us. So I really want to find ways to improve that process so that we could better utilize that time. So I think offering users a way to be able to scrape their sites would be ideal, or even when we get submissions, just as a manual option, when we get submissions, to start looking to make sure that we are scraping those sites already, or scraping those venues already, I should say. And then the other thing for UGC is I'm interested in them having an option to, we used to require users to have to search before they could submit something, and that's something we don't have today. So that's part of kind of how we get a lot of duplicate content as well. So anyway, duplicate content, there's several line items around that, and then there's several line items around imports and just making the process smoother. I have talked with Points Local about, just in general, I think we need some assistance from them with solution architecture for coming up with better ways for imports to work. So we know what some of the issues are, but we may not know what all the answers are. So that's one of the things I have on my plate this week, to work with them to understand what that process could look like, so that we could really kind of pick their brains, brainstorm from a technology perspective about what are some ways that they might be able to architect for us how to solve for imports, because we have for the last year been trying to come up with the answers. We're not quite there yet. So we know what the problems are, but we really need some answers still. And then there's just some other things. One of the things I want to show you from a UX perspective is this quick pass that I put together at leveraging the mobile first story page, which I haven't seen. I don't exactly know what it's going to look like, so that's still in the works, and we're probably going to see more this week actually. But the idea is that I would like the events pages to kind of look closer to what a story page looks like. And it doesn't have to look exactly the same, but I want to leverage all of that good research that we did around what makes that story page work well and use it here. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so one of the things is the hero image is pushing content down way too far. So this is a comparison of sort of like a mock-up of what I would expect going forward and what we have today on the right-hand side. So you can just see, and it doesn't necessarily have to be this huge honking hero image. That's just the size that we have today. But you can see more clearly the event title. There's some cleanup here of information that's not really maybe useful to the user. I also would like to see us leverage like date ranges, for example. So I have some line items about that, so that events, you can see the full date range of an event, particularly obviously if it's a recurring event. And just really cutting down on that hero image is really bumping content up, which on desktop, which is where the majority of our traffic is coming from, might not make that much of a difference. But when you're on mobile, you can really see the improvement. Similarly with having one row of navigation, particularly with mobile, I think that's going to help us out a lot. So I want to be mindful that we only have 5 minutes left, and just reiterate that these 26 items are a first pass, but the idea is I would like to kind of have feedback from you guys within the next, I don't exactly know when, because we're hitting Thanksgiving here soon, so probably definitely before then. If you have any feedback, and I'd like to get this prioritized and work with, because the thing is, once we prioritize it on a CMG level, I still have to get Points Local to review those rankings and prioritize it on their end. So we're not their only client. So it's going to be a process, yeah? And there may be limited development as well. So we may not get everything we're asking for. So we're going to really focus on the most critical items. So I'm going to take a pause and stop talking for a minute and let you guys, like I'd like to kind of go around and just give you each a minute to kind of say if there's anything off the bat that you would like to see included here, or definitely would like to see ranked. So I'll start with Rachel in Dayton, or anyone else that may be on from Dayton at this point.
So there was one item that maybe it'll be best for me to just email you, that was a one-off we had requested that's like a critical need for Ohio, and Points Local had said it would be pretty easy to implement, but I have never heard anything back, so I might send you some info to check and see if that got completed, or if not, if we can get it worked in here somewhere.
Sure.
But that was an Ohio-specific issue, so...
Okay, can you give me like a little teaser of what that might have been?
So we use the popular tag to populate those top events, and for Ohio we need some sort of custom tag so that we can differentiate what's on Journal News, Springfield, and Dayton.com.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, send me along any conversations that have started in that regard, and we'll go from there. Thanks,
okay,
Rachel. Yeah, and if you think of anything else, let me know. So let's jump to Austin. So Gabby, I know Courtney, you're just jumping into things again. But yeah, do you guys have any initial sort of reactions or thoughts?
I don't think I have anything right off the bat. I definitely want to make sure that Katie has a chance to look at this to see if there's anything that jumps out at her.
Absolutely. And that's part of my plan is, you know, Katie, I don't think works on Mondays, and I think there's a couple folks from Dayton that also have schedule conflicts for this time. So I'm definitely going to pass along in the meeting notes a link to this recording as well as this documentation. So that's totally fine.
That sounds great. Thanks, Jen.
Sure. And Atlanta, I know we've got a few folks from a sales perspective, and I know Matt's on, so Ashley, I do have a couple items for revenue, like things like I would like to see leaderboards on the pages. There's some other revenue pieces and making sure that we're getting revenue from Ticketmaster. But anything from you, Ashley, or Jamie, or Matt?
Yeah, that looks good, Jen, and I actually have some information that we've been working, as you know, with Points transparency, which is related to get some ads in place. So I'll follow back up with you on the ads for Points Local.
Yep.
And I'd love to touch base with you on this, the suggested revisions that you have there, so that those look cool too. And then one other quick question, the AMP that you mentioned. So I guess I didn't realize that there are AMP versions of the Points Local pages. So is that just literally someone's doing a Google search and there are the AMP versions of that?
That's my understanding. I haven't actually seen them, and we have no metrics around them. So they're kind of I'm assuming the question you have is, are there ads on there? So I'm guessing.
And I would imagine the answer is no to that, but I just didn't even realize there were AMP pages. So that'll be another thing on my list.
So I think there's a lot around AMP that we need to get some clarity on. So I'll definitely, when I learn more, loop you in on that as well to make sure we have ads on there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Jamie or Matt or anybody else that has thoughts?
No, I think this is great. I'm working with Tracy here to see what'll happen with picking up where Melanie was supporting the Atlanta local market. So we'll have to dig a little bit deeper to see what needs to be picked up.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, well...
And I was, sorry, this is Jamie. I was just going to make one request.
Sure.
I wanted to share this presentation and certainly the Data Studio report with Ryan Stoltz, who works on my team and is pretty involved with Access Atlanta Things to Do stuff. He shared in the link and he said he couldn't access. Is it public, or will you make it public after the call?
I'm going to share the link to the spreadsheet that's on here after the call, but the metrics report should be public. So if he's having issues with that, I'll make sure that that's working too, but that should be available for anyone. So, that's great. Please share this with others. And I'm sorry, I know we're right at time, but I apologize. Sam, are you still on? Did you have any feedback? I want to make sure to include you as well.
I'm still on. Thanks, Jen. No, I think that it looks really great.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure thing.
Hey, Jen, this is Chris. Just one quick
thing. Chris.
Hey. We can do this offline, but I thought there was somewhere in Points Local where you could actually pull reports specific to your report is awesome. Thank you so much for putting that together. What if we need to see, what if they're not, the specific event for a specific client is not in the top 5, it's like buried or something.
Yeah.
I need to know how to pull that in Points Local or wherever. So.
Yep. Yeah, and let's circle back on that, because I know when you and Brian and I talked, I think what we need to do is start using a keyword in the URL structure for those, and I can create a little module where we're automatically tracking those on the report for Palm Beach, because Palm Beach is the only one doing featured events that way. But we'll circle up on that, because that would be great to know and understand.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging back a couple extra minutes. Was there Matt, did you have something?
No, great job.
Cool.
Thank you.
Catch y'all later. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen.